Hello, friends, and welcome to the October 16th edition of Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly opportunity for mainstream Texans of faith to learn about public policy issues here in the great state of Texas and have a conversation about how you can engage in the process. My name is Scott Atnip, your host and Texas Impact's Outreach Director, and today's episode is being brought to you by Methodist Healthcare Ministries of South Texas. And today we have a special edition of Weekly Witness. We are coming to you live from the Texas State Capitol, from the office of State Representative Mary Gonzalez. So thank you so much for having us today.
I'm really excited to talk to y'all on such important issues. I'm glad that you do this work.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That's very kind. We'll have you do a commercial later. I'm just kidding. So first of all, I know you are from the House District 75, which is in and around the El Paso area. This is your fourth term, and you've been a champion on many issues, from public education to agriculture to investment in a lot of important issues. But I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, and for the faith community, one of the questions that they always ask is why people choose to do things. So I wonder if, as you introduce yourself, you can maybe talk about why you chose to commit yourself to this important work of public service.
Well, a brief lapse of sanity is usually the first answer. But hi, everybody. My name is Mary Gonzalez. I represent House District 75. It's Eastern El Paso County. I always talk about it being the micro to the macro Texas, fastest growing parts of El Paso City. It has the suburbs of El Paso, East Lake, and Horizon. It has 263 colonias. It has the agricultural community of El Paso County, of Socorro, Fabens, Clint, Tornillo, Sanelli. It also has a Native American nation and a state park, Hueco Tanks, and it borders Mexico and New Mexico. It is literally all of Texas in one district, and I'm really proud to be from there. I grew up in a little town called Clint, Texas. It's a farming community. And when I was little, I would tell my dad, I just want to change the world. And my dad, who was really engaged politically, would say, okay, mija, well, then you should get involved in politics. And so I said, okay, Dad. So I'd start reading and I would get involved. And I decided that when I graduated from high school, I wanted to come to UT Austin to work at the Capitol. Yes, go Longhorns. And so I left Clint. I was the only one from my high school to come up here that year, and started here at the Capitol, worked for 3 legislative members, and guess what happened?
What happened?
I hated politics.
Really?
I felt that it moved too slowly and it played political football in people's lives. And I was at the heart of being an activist, ready to just change the world. And so when I just got here, I just was like, why are we building a new hospital on the border? Because we didn't have a hospital on the border at that time.
Right.
A medical school on the border. And I just couldn't understand why it was taking so long to get these basic needs for people. So I went to my advisor and I said, I came all the way from Clint, Texas, to try to make the world a better place. I want to do it through politics, but I just don't think I belong in this world. And she said, okay. She asked me 2 really important questions. And I think these are important questions that faith people ask themselves all the time. One is, what about the world do you want to make difference?
Right.
And 2, what really changes the world? So the first answer was, I wanted to create a more socially just and humane world. I wanted every day to tackle issues of sexism and racism and anti-Semitism and classism and ableism and all the isms in an intersectional way. And I realized for me, the way I wanted to make that change was by being an educator. I realized that my teachers and my professors were creating a consciousness that helped me become passionate about making a difference. So I switched gears. I became a professor, assistant dean at Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas.
Okay.
And I loved everything about it. In 2012, the seat opened up, and Annie's List, an organization that helps select women, said, we're going to find a woman. Long story short, they found me. I told them no at first because I hated politics. But my students they called me out and they said, hey, every day you tell us to go out and change the world, and you're not doing it. And I just wanted to practice what I preached to my students. So I jumped in, not thinking I was going to win. Actually, maybe hoping I wasn't going to win. But wanted to model what it meant to practice the things that I was asking my students to do.
Right.
And 7 years later, here we are.
Right. Well done, good politician, giving shout outs to UT and Southwestern advisors and students. But I am thankful that advisor and those students encouraged you to get into this important work. So every day when we wake up and watch the news or listen to podcasts, we're hearing about an important election in November, but usually talking about November 2020. Right. And so we do have an election coming up on November 5th. Where voters will have a chance to vote on 10 constitutional amendments. And I wonder if you can just kind of explain the process in Texas. Why do we have 10 constitutional amendments that we're going to vote on this time?
That's a great question because I don't think if you polled people across Texas, they wouldn't know what's on the November ballot this upcoming November. And it's actually really critical. I mean, out of all of the constitutional amendment ballots I've seen, this one is critical for the future of Texas, the quality of life, or just basic life necessities. We have Prop 2, right, and we're going to talk about this more, but about water and wastewater infrastructure. Prop 8 about flooding mitigation. There are some really serious things that really will impact people's lives. And so why do we do it? There's a lot of philosophical arguments to that. And as a professor, could write a dissertation on this.
We could spend an hour on that today, huh?
We could spend 200 pages on this. But I will say, the process is, and this is why the ballot measures are so important. In order for these ballot measures to get on the ballot, they have to have a supermajority in the House and in the Senate. They have to go through a much more rigorous process. And there's a variety of reasons why these are the ballot measures. They can be from political to just like Prop 2, which is just technical. But at the end of the day, it's not like a campaign where I'm out there getting voters to go vote. No one is getting people to go vote for these propositions, which are critical to the future of our state.
Yeah, so talk about that some, because Josh has done presentations first in the past that have talked about the fact that if we get to 50% voter turnout in a presidential year, like that might be pretty good. In the primaries, it's much less. These constitutional amendments probably have really low turnout, right? So why is it so important that people educate themselves and vote?
Well, with really low turnout means your vote counts so much more. If, like, for example, if you bring 10 people to vote, that could be a significant percentage in that precinct. And so we need people. Also, like, I just finished my dissertation.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It was hard. But one of the first questions I asked in my dissertation research was, is democracy in trouble in the United States? And I think that is a question we need to be asking ourselves. Like, what does democracy look like 10, 20 years from now? And so I think we have a responsibility to take our democratic responsibility seriously and become educated and then go vote for these measures, which will really impact Texas, not just now, but for the next generation.
Right. So there are 10 constitutional amendments that we'll be voting on beginning next Monday, October 21st. So excited. Are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there every day at the polls. I'm really excited.
So, and we'll talk next week on Weekly Witness about all 10, or at least most of the 10 with the League of Women Voters. But you are especially excited about Prop 2, which would allow the Texas Water Development Board, which finances water infrastructure projects in the state, to issue $200 million in bonds for water supply and wastewater projects in poor areas across the state. Why is this important?
I mean, I think in the national conversation, we hear about Flint, Michigan.
Right.
We have very similar issues here in Texas. There are thousands, nearly millions of Texans that don't have access to clean water or wastewater infrastructure. A lot of people take for granted there are families that can't flush their toilet or wash their own clothes at home. In my local community, I'll give an example. There's like community meetings every 2 weeks about trying to advocate for clean water in a colonia, and the school superintendent sits on that committee. Why? Because he sees that kids don't go to school because they get sick because of inadequate wastewater infrastructure and not having clean water. So why is it important to me? Because no Texan should not have clean water and wastewater infrastructure. 2, the state has already invested $500 million in trying to get some of these projects off the ground. If we don't continue these and finish out these projects, then we might as well have just burnt that money on a fire, because we'll never be able to complete these projects. 3, again, what kind of state are we building for the next generation? If we don't create water and wastewater infrastructure in the places where we need them the most, it'll be really hard to fix the problem 10 to 20 years from now. We need to address the problem now and continue to address it, because there is so much need in this state around this issue.
So let me ask you this. I know there will be a lot of folks who listen to this who then go back to their Sunday school class and congregations and, talk about the importance of voting on November 5th or before. What's the short story what's the short takeaway you would send them with to talk to those Sunday school classes or congregations? What's this all about?
I mean, this is about everybody should have clean water and everybody should be able to flush their toilet, and that should be a basic right.
Right.
And here's the thing, we have the resources to do it. and we should be people in this state who do allow for that. You know, it's just I've been dealing with this issue since I was a little kid. I mean, literally a little kid. When I was in high school, I would have friends who lived in colonias who didn't have the capability to shower in their own homes, so they would shower in our local gym. And so I have been fighting for this even before I was elected. And I'm kind of sad that we still have to fight for this very basic need, but at least as a state, we get to come together and do it. And what is really great for people, I think, watching, is that a lot of times people get disenchanted with politics, thinking it's really partisan. This Prop 2 is beautiful in the fact that Republicans and Democrats have come together to say, this is a need for our state, and we're going to get it done. And so I'm really excited about just the coalition of people that come to the table, because this issue impacts communities from the border to East Texas, literally all over the state. And so we can really change the conditions for a lot of our people. Somebody
who lives in East Texas, I will echo that this is certainly needed for our part of the state as well. So I do thank you for the work that you put in. Looking at the numbers, you mentioned that this did pass with bipartisan support. I think in the House was 114 to 27, and in the Senate 22 to 8. So the legislature did have a supermajority who thought that this was an important priority. That said, I did want to give you a chance to respond to one of the possible critiques that's been out there, folks who say that this should come from general revenue rather than bonds. So what would you say to folks who would make that argument?
Yeah, so when we think about, this is a technical issue. When we think about the way we do big infrastructure projects, highways, these type of projects, even stormwater projects, the way we do funding in the state is by a biennium. So if you don't use the funding in 2 years, it goes away. So if I'm a contractor and I get a contract and I'm worried that maybe for whatever reason the project doesn't get done in 2 years and then the funding's gone, at least with bonds there's stability and security, and they allow us for us to do the projects in the time that is needed to do the projects right. And so we've always done these giant infrastructure projects using bond money because of just some of the technical dynamics of these projects. And so, I hear the philosophical argument of using general revenue. That is a conversation that maybe the state should be having, but that is a whole system overhaul about how we fund infrastructure projects. And right now the process is like this, and until the whole process changes, that's probably the best way to do it and get it done.
Yeah, so until we have that philosophical conversation, we have a chance right now to provide water access to a whole bunch of Texans. I'll give you one last chance to sell it. How else?
Wait, I haven't convinced you?
No, just in case there's anybody out there listening or watching who needs one last chance. What impact, and you talked about this a little bit in the beginning, what impact would this have on Texas families?
Well, definitely, I think when we talk about $1 of investment has $100 in health benefits for our state. When we talk about $1 investment is thousands of dollars in economic development for our state. If you think about communities that don't have this clean water, the schools are having to bring in water bottles, which cost extra money. Instead of buying books, they're buying water bottles, right? If you think about a community that maybe doesn't have a grocery store because they don't have the infrastructure, well, then you think about food deserts and you think about not having access to healthy foods. I mean, there's just a domino effect. And so why should we care? Because we should care about the health, the safety, and the economics of the entire state of Texas, regardless of if you live in rural or low-income communities.
That'll preach. Where can people go to get more information?
So we have a website, turnonthetaptexas.org. That has tons of facts and information. Also, I'm sure y'all have some information on my website and Facebook and Twitter. I'll have all that information. Trust me, we are putting it out everywhere. All you have to do is Google Proposition 2 in Texas and we will find you.
Absolutely. So anything else you'd like to shamelessly plug today?
No, I know there's a lot of things that people could be watching right now. I'm really grateful that people are paying attention, because we need more people in Texas to pay attention to what's going on, because our state requires active engagement or else things slip through the cracks. And unfortunately, usually the most vulnerable communities slip through the cracks when people aren't paying attention. So thank you for paying attention, and my door is always open, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. And friends, we do have our homework assignment now. Election Day is November 5th. Early voting starts next Monday. If you're watching live or listening on podcast this week, that's October 21st. Again, this is a low turnout election. So get your friends, get your neighbors, drag them to the polls, make sure your congregation, Sunday school classes, and networks are all tuned in, are paying attention, and are voting. This is an important election, and we're going to need each and every one of you. Representative, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you all, and thank you for what y'all do.
All right. So once again, we thank you for tuning in today. Check back with us next week, and we'll go through the entire list of constitutional amendments and talk about the ballot, and again, remind you to vote. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. If you've made it this far in the broadcast, you obviously appreciate the work of Weekly Witness and the Texas Impact community. So please make sure you become a member by going to texasimpact.org/join. So we'll see you next week. Until then, let's get to work.